You don't feel lonely because no one loves you. You feel lonely because you're hiding the parts of you that most need to be seen. And the truth is, most of us aren't starving for connection, we're terrified of it. Because real connection requires something we've been taught to fear: vulnerability. I remember sitting at a dinner table once, surrounded by people who knew my name, knew my story, even knew how I took my coffee. And still, I felt completely alone. And I mean that bone-deep kind of alone, the kind that makes your chest feel hollow, even as you smile and nod and make polite conversation. I remember watching the way the candlelight flickered across their faces, hearing the clink of silverware, and feeling like I was behind glass, like I was in the room, but not really there. And I kept thinking, how can I be with people who care about me, who ask about my day, and still feel like I'm the only person in the world? Loneliness is tricky like that. It doesn't always announce itself with empty rooms or unanswered texts. Sometimes it comes quietly when you're in a crowd, when you're laughing, but it's not reaching your eyes, when you're sharing stories that don't really matter because the ones that do feel too dangerous to say out loud. And if you've ever been in that place, you know what I mean. It's not the absence of people that hurts most. It's the absence of being understood, of being truly seen. The hard part is, we don't talk about this kind of loneliness. We don't post about it. We don't name it. And so we start to believe the story that maybe we're the only ones feeling this way, that maybe something's wrong with us, that maybe if we were funnier, prettier, more successful, we'd feel connected. But here's the raw, unvarnished truth. It's not about how many people are around you. It's about whether you can let anyone close enough to see the parts of you that you're most afraid of showing, the parts that tremble, the parts that ache. Psychologists call this perceived social isolation. And what's wild is that it lights up the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. Your heart aches because your brain literally believes you're in danger. Because as human beings, we are wired to need emotional closeness. Not just proximity, closeness. The kind that says, I see you, I hear you, you matter. And yet, how often do we hide? How often do we stay quiet about what's really going on? We tell ourselves we're protecting our relationships by keeping the hard stuff locked away. But the truth is, we're starving them. We're starving ourselves. What I've learned, what I'm still learning, is that loneliness isn't cured by filling your calendar. It's cured by letting yourself be known. And that, my friend, is one of the bravest things you'll ever do. Because to be known means risking rejection, but it also means giving yourself a chance at the kind of love that heals. And maybe, just maybe, that's worth everything. When I look back at the times I felt safest, I realize now that what I thought was safety was really just me hiding behind armor I didn't know I was wearing. I used to pride myself on being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who didn't need help. I'd brush off concern with a joke, change the subject if anyone got too close to asking the real questions, and tell people I was fine so many times that I started to believe it myself, until the nights got quiet and the loneliness came crashing in. And I know I'm not the only one who's done this. We all have these subtle, quiet ways of building walls around our hearts, while telling ourselves we're just being smart, being careful, being independent. It's funny, isn't it? We build this armor to protect ourselves from pain, but it ends up becoming the very reason we stay in pain. I wore my armor like a badge of honor. I thought if I stayed self-sufficient, no one could disappoint me. If I didn't ask for anything, no one could say no. If I didn't let anyone close, no one could hurt me. But here's the price of that protection. I kept out the hurt, sure, but I also kept out love. I kept out the kind of connection that requires openness, vulnerability. I kept out the very thing I said I wanted most. And it's not just me. Most of us learn early in life that being vulnerable can come with consequences. Maybe we opened up once and were laughed at. Maybe we shared our heart and it was used against us. Maybe we asked for help and were shamed for it. So we decided never again. We patch up the holes in our armor and walk through life with a smile that doesn't quite reach our eyes. We call it strength, but it's not strength. It's fear dressed up in confidence. It's loneliness pretending to be independence. From a psychological perspective, this is what's known as avoidant coping. We avoid emotional risks because somewhere along the way, our brains learn to associate vulnerability with danger. And the more we do it, the more our nervous system stays on guard, always scanning for threats, never allowing true closeness. The irony is brutal. The armor we built to feel safe is what keeps us trapped in isolation. It blocks us from the very thing that would heal that isolation. Real, soul-deep connection. And maybe the hardest part of all is realizing that no one can take that armor off for you. People can love you, they can try to break through, but the choice to lower the shield, that's yours, and it's terrifying. It feels like standing naked in a storm, but there is no other way to let love in, no other way to feel known, seen, cherished. Not for your performance, but for your truth. What I've come to believe after all the years of hiding behind my own walls is this: the armor that keeps you safe from hurt is the same armor that keeps you lonely. And at some point you have to ask yourself, is it really worth it? I'll never forget the moment a woman stood up in one of my workshops, tears welling in her eyes, and said, "No one wants to hear how broken I really am." The room went quiet, not awkward quiet, but heavy quiet. The kind of silence that says, we've all felt that. And I just stood there, heart aching, because I've said that lie to myself too. Maybe not out loud, but I've whispered it to myself late at night when everything felt too heavy. That voice that says, if people really knew me, my doubts, my mess, my darkness, they'd walk away. That lie, I'm too much or I'm not enough, is so deeply ingrained in so many of us. We don't come into this world believing that. We learn it somewhere along the way. Someone made us feel like our emotions were burdens, like our pain was inconvenient, like our real story was too ugly or too raw or just too much. So we started editing ourselves. We softened our edges, bit our tongues, told stories with all the messy parts removed. We learned how to be likable, how to be palatable, but never, never how to be real. And here's the heartbreaking cost of that lie. We might be surrounded by people, but we feel more alone than ever. Because deep down, we know the love we're receiving isn't for us, it's for the version we've created to be accepted. We crave connection, but we don't believe we're worthy of it unless we shrink or hide or perform. That is emotional starvation disguised as social acceptance. Psychologists call this impression management, and while it helps us feel in control, it also erodes our self-worth over time. Because every time you silence your truth to protect someone else's comfort, you send a message to yourself. You send a message to yourself. My real self isn't safe here. Over time, that belief calcifies into shame. And shame is the breeding ground for loneliness. Not because we're unlovable, but because we've never let anyone love us as we truly are. And let me tell you something. The people who have the capacity to truly love you are not looking for perfection. They're not asking for polished. They're asking for presence, for honesty, for that moment when you say, I'm not okay, and trust that someone will stay. And even if they don't, especially if they don't, it doesn't mean your truth was wrong. It just means they weren't your people. Here's what I've come to believe deep in my bones. Vulnerability is not about spilling everything. It's about being honest enough to be known. And that requires something most of us are afraid to give, our unfiltered truth. So if you've ever said to yourself, "No one wants to hear how broken I really am," I want you to know this: that voice is lying to you. Not because you're not broken, maybe you are, we all are in some way, but because you are not alone in that. And when you share from your brokenness with someone safe, someone capable, it doesn't push people away. It brings them closer. We weren't meant to be loved despite our cracks. We were meant to be loved through them. There was a time when I believed the worst thing I could be was too much. Too loud, too emotional, too intense. I remember sitting across from someone I loved deeply, someone whose opinion meant the world to me, and hearing them say, "You feel everything too deeply. It's exhausting." And in that moment, a part of me went quiet, not because I agreed, but because I thought that maybe if I just toned it down, if I could just be a little less, I'd finally be worthy of staying. So I started shrinking. I started second-guessing every word, every tear, every time my heart wanted to speak. I started editing myself to fit into a version that felt safer for them, but also for me, because if I was smaller, maybe I wouldn't risk being abandoned. And what I didn't realize then, but see so clearly now, is that this is the story so many of us are living. We're carrying this invisible weight of not enough or too much, like we exist on a scale where we're always falling short or overflowing, but never just right. We believe that if we could just find the magic middle, that perfect sweet spot, where we're not too needy, not too distant, not too emotional, not too stoic, then we'd finally be loved in the way our hearts ache for. But that middle doesn't exist. And the more we chase it, the more disconnected we become from ourselves. The truth is, the fear of being too much or not enough is rooted in shame. It's that quiet, corrosive voice that says who you are is wrong. Who you are will cost you love. And so we do what we think we have to do. We water ourselves down. We smile when we want to cry. We stay quiet when everything inside of us is screaming to be heard. We minimize our joys because we don't want to outshine others, and we minimize our pain because we don't want to burden them. And slowly, without even realizing it, we start disappearing. Psychologists talk about conditional self-worth, this idea that our value depends on how well we meet other people's expectations. And it's a trap. Because the more you mold yourself to what others want, the more invisible you feel, the more disconnected, the lonelier. And the cruelest part, even if people love the version of you that you've carefully curated, deep down, you'll always wonder, would they still love me if they really knew me? That question will haunt you until you answer it. And the only way to answer it is to stop performing and start showing up as you, all of you. The messy parts, the tender parts, the passionate, loud, quiet, aching, joyful parts, all of it. What I've learned, and I say this with every bit of honesty I have, is that you are not too much, and you are not enough. The people who make you feel that way, they're often people who are still terrified of their own depth, their own mess, their own truth. And that's not your burden to carry. You were never meant to be digestible. You were meant to be whole. And the ones who are meant for you, they'll never ask you to shrink. They'll never ask you to hide. They'll look at your fullness, your intensity, your softness, your truth, and say, "I see you." and I'm staying. So the next time that fear creeps in, telling you to be less or be more, remember this: you were never supposed to fit into anyone's idea of enough. You were born to be you. And that is exactly right. There's a moment most of us have lived through, maybe more than once, where we're sitting alone in the quiet, maybe staring at the ceiling or scrolling mindlessly through our phones, and a wave hits us. That aching question, is this really all there is? You've checked the boxes, you've shown up, you've played it safe, and yet something's missing. Something hollow hums beneath the surface. And we try to fill it with productivity, with distraction, with validation, with busyness, but the ache doesn't leave, because what we're really longing for is to be seen, not admired, not praised, seen. That kind of being seen is rare and it's sacred, and it requires the kind of bravery no one claps for, the quiet courage to let someone see you in your rawest state. No filter, no mask, just you. The you who's tired, the you who's grieving, the you who's angry, hopeful, scared, tender, and still trying. But the fear? The fear is that if we show that version of ourselves, people will turn away. That will be met with silence, or worse, shame. So instead, we stay hidden. We keep the truth under lock and key. We give just enough of ourselves to feel socially acceptable, but never enough to feel deeply known. We learn how to present well, we learn how to control the narrative, but we also learn how to stay lonely. So lonely. Because connection without authenticity is just performance. It's presence without intimacy. And no matter how good we get at pretending, our souls know the difference. There's a term in psychology, safe emotional exposure. It refers to the slow, intentional process of revealing ourselves to someone who has earned the right to witness our truth. It's the opposite of oversharing. It's not about broadcasting your pain. It's about choosing to be real on purpose, with people who are capable of holding that realness with tenderness. And it is terrifying every time. But it's also how healing begins. I think we have this idea that bravery looks like standing on a stage or taking bold risks or doing something loud. But honestly, one of the bravest things I've ever seen is someone sitting across from another human being and saying, "This is who I am. This is where I hurt. This is what I hope for." No polish, no pretending, just the soft, trembling truth of being human. And yes, it comes with risk. Not everyone will know how to hold your truth. Some will look away. Some will try to fix it or minimize it or make it about them. And that hurts. But you know what's worse? Never letting anyone in. Never giving anyone a chance to love the real you. Because the price of that protection is a lifetime of ache. I think the question we have to ask ourselves is this: would I rather be misunderstood for who I really am, or loved for someone I'm pretending to be? Because one of those roads leads to freedom, and the other leads to a slow kind of suffocation. We talk a lot about love and belonging, but real belonging only happens when you show up without your armor. When you risk being misunderstood in order to be known. When you tell the truth even if your voice shakes. And maybe that's the bravest thing you'll ever do, not because you're fearless, but because you're scared and you show up anyway. So if you're tired of hiding, if you're aching for real connection, start here. Let one person see you, really see you. And if you can't find that person yet, be that person for yourself. Speak your truth in the mirror. Stop apologizing for your tenderness. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Start standing in the full light of your truth and whisper to yourself, "This is me. I'm still here, and I'm worthy of being seen." That is the beginning of everything. Loneliness doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. It means your heart is still alive and longing for something real. And vulnerability, it's not the enemy. It's the only doorway to the kind of connection your soul is starving for. So don't numb it, don't run from it. Let yourself be seen. That's how we come home to each other.